I did not shoot my husband, and I don't know even how to defend myself against the truth, you know.
Today we're jumping right back into the third and final part of the murder of Dan Brophy. If you haven't seen the first two videos, the link is in the description. But with that being said, let's get into it. Where we left off, Nancy was arrested on September 5th, and on the same day a search warrant was executed for Nancy's house and storage units. Nancy had a large group of people helping her organize, pack, and clean the house, so officers spent most of the day sorting through boxes. They were looking for a potential second weapon, documents, or anything that might be of value to the investigation. During the trial, we see just how much evidence detectives gained after Nancy's arrest. In the home, law enforcement seized 2 laptops, and while going through a series of boxes in a bedroom closet, they came across a box that said Scarves, Purses, GK. Officers obviously didn't know what GK stood for, but under a bunch of scarves, officers recognized a handgun case. Inside the case, officers didn't find a whole complete handgun, but instead all the parts to build an unserialized Glock 19 handgun. Nancy had never disclosed that she had ever purchased a second weapon, and this build-a-gun kit was certainly more advanced than the average gun owner, and it certainly didn't fit with Nancy's story of her and Dan having only purchased one gun for self-defense. When going through the laptops, detectives discovered that Nancy had recently started obsessively researching guns, how to build a gun, gun kits, and ghost guns. On December 24th, 2017, she made the purchase of the ghost gun kit from ghostguns.com. The following February was when she purchased the handgun that she had handed over to law enforcement. She had done a lot of research, particularly in swapping out barrels. She had watched several YouTube videos on how to do it. The slide and barrel from the ghost gun kit was slightly larger than the slide and barrel she purchased from the gun show. When law enforcement is doing ballistic testing, the marks or striations we see and are compared to come from the barrel of the gun. The striations on the gun Nancy purchased from the gun show didn't match the striations on the shell casings found at the crime scene. However, if that slide and barrel had been swapped out, that could account for why they didn't match. The barrel from the ghost kit wouldn't fit, so if Nancy had planned to swap out the barrel to deliver a clean gun to law enforcement, she would need another one that did fit. Nancy had 2 laptops, one that was newer, working, and functional, and then she had an older one that wasn't working. The screen was broken, but the hard drive was still fine, and law enforcement was able to access the information from that computer. On it, experts found that Nancy had made an eBay account and made one purchase. On February 22nd, she purchased just a slide and barrel that would fit the gun that she purchased from the gun show, not the ghost gun. Nancy claimed that the ghost kit had been purchased as research for one of her novels. She said that she hadn't told law enforcement about it because she didn't consider it a weapon because it was still in parts. When asked about the additional slide she bought, she said that it was just research for her book, just like the ghost gun. She said that she was writing about a character who was escaping a captive situation by ordering pieces to a gun bit by bit in the mail. But if that were true, why did she get an additional slide and barrel that didn't fit the gun that she was researching? Let alone to say that the Brophies couldn't afford all of these purchases. In total, between the handgun, the ghost gun, and the slide and barrel, that was almost $2,000 that the Brophies didn't have.
And you found yourself on the website, searching around. What, I mean, you're saying you bought this gun kit as a research. When did that story start in your head?
It came together when I read that story. When I read that article in the paper about this guy, and all of a sudden I knew how I could twist it and make it into a story. You know, ideas come, out of the blue, and when they come sailing by, you write them down so you don't forget them, and then sometimes you act on them.
And that was November of
November,
2017?
sometime in November
That you
of
read,
17.
You read the article, started doing research.
Mm-hmm.
And you visited the Ghost Guns website several times without purchasing anything.
That's true.
And what were you searching for on the Ghost Guns website?
Research.
What were you looking for?
I was looking. Keep in mind, I know nothing about guns at this point. I knew nothing about guns. And so what I was trying to do, if I'm going to write a story on building a gun, I got to learn a lot about guns in the time frame that I have. I cannot be the person who knows nothing and write a story anybody would believe.
Okay. And were you doing other research online regarding ghost gun build kits?
Not that I remember. I was pretty happy with the Ghost Gun site, and I know there were other sites that did similar things, but the Ghost Gun site made it seem simpler than some of the others.
Okay. And you felt that it provided you some information on how the build would occur?
Yes.
Were there plans or anything on there?
What do you mean exactly? Plans? You mean like architectural plans, like plans that show like when you're putting IKEA furniture together plans?
I guess. I don't know.
Not that I saw.
And so I guess what you're saying is then when you decided to purchase one, you just thought that it was going to be easier to build.
I leap into the water first. Yes. Dan's our researcher in that regard.
You are a researcher, or you're not?
No, I said that backwards. I am a person who, once I have an idea, tends to leap forward. Dan, once he has an idea, tends to research it to death. And then the chickens are a perfect example of this. He would read to me at night from the romantic books called Chickens in Your Backyard or Chicken Tractors. But when we got chickens, Dan had a whole plan for how they were going to work. If I had thought, hey, chickens would be fun, we would have had a plan, build it as you go plan. He was just a planner, and I was not.
So were you researching for a book or not?
I'm sorry, did I go off target there? I was researching for a book, but I wasn't researching beyond here. Let me see if I can say this simpler than I'm doing it. I was researching for a book, but it didn't occur to me that putting the Ghost Gun together would be as complicated as it was. What occurred to me was, hey, here's this system I can use. And now that you mention it, when I got the Ghost Gun in this little case, there was instructions in there, I'm fairly sure. I'm not sure now that I've said that, sorry.
Initially, she had told detectives that neither she nor Dan handled what we're going to call the gun show handgun. But at her trial, she said that they had.
Stated you bought this Ghost Gun build kit and you realized you couldn't put it together.
No, I realized it was more intricate. I didn't realize I couldn't put it together. It was more intricate than I had thought it would be.
Okay, and based on what?
Based upon the fact that it was supposed to be few parts, and I thought it was a few too many parts.
What steps did you take to actually try to build it?
I didn't take any because I wasn't ready to write that story yet.
You decided to write that story months prior.
Yes.
But you weren't ready to start writing it.
That's right.
So what was the need to buy the gun at that point?
I was celebrating. It was Christmas.
Right. But what was the need to buy the gun if you weren't writing the story yet?
Mr. Overstreet, we have had testimony upon testimony upon testimony about the fact Dan was a collector. Dan wasn't a collector by himself. I had my little piles of stuff, you know. What I found, what I have found in life is if you see something you want it, you can afford it, buy it now, because circling back for it, it may or may not be there.
And so now you're a gun collector?
No. Now I have a piece of writing information research.
Did you said you didn't take any steps to try to build this gun.
I did not.
And I want to show you what's marked as State's Exhibit 25. First of all, do you recognize this?
Yes.
Do you recognize all the parts in here?
Well, you're further away than I would say, but certainly it looks like all the parts are there.
Is this what it looked like when you got it?
Yes.
Approximately.
Approximately.
Okay. And you saw this part in the kit.
I did.
Was there anything you needed to do to this to make it functional?
I hadn't gotten that deep into this gun. I'm not sure how to answer that question because the answer is I don't know.
Was there anything in the instructions or anything you saw online that made you think that you needed to manipulate this part?
And once again, I go back to I don't know because there are a slew of parts. You know, the only thing I can attribute it to is when you buy an IKEA thing, there are pieces that come fairly close together. And that isn't where you celebrate. You celebrate the little bags of all, you don't celebrate the little bag. Let me say this sentence again where it makes sense. You're delighted to see pieces more or less together. All the little parts, you're less delighted to see.
And is this why you never even opened these little baggies?
I wasn't ready to start yet, and I didn't want them misplaced.
Okay. And so you made no attempts to try to build it. You didn't do any further research because you weren't ready to write this story?
That's right.
Okay. Thank you. Your defense attorney stated in opening that you knew, or that you thought that you knew, that Nathaniel had previously done a build kit.
Yes.
You knew that, or thought that at least.
I thought he had said that, and I believed him.
When you have this story to do a gun build kit, and you actually, when purchased a gun build kit, you didn't ever talk to Nathaniel about his experience with a build kit.
No, and that wouldn't have been where I would have gone with that. Where I would have gone first would be to my father-in-law, Jack, who I knew had every equipment in the world and could help me drill out the parts that needed to be drilled out.
Okay, but you didn't do that either.
No, because I wasn't ready to start yet.
And how did you know you needed a drill press?
Because it was on one of the videos.
One of the videos.
Uh-huh.
How many did you watch?
I don't know.
Why were you watching videos if you weren't writing the story yet?
I was watching videos to see how to put it together.
But I thought you weren't ready to put it together.
I'm not ready to put it together, but that doesn't mean I'm not researching what I have to do to get it ready to get put together.
Okay, so now you're doing research online.
We have stated previously, and I am not backing down from that I investigated. One of my friends has a sign over her desk that says, only James Michener gets to use all his research. You research everything to maybe come up with 6 sentences in a book that will make the book more realistic. So yeah, I do tons of research.
You do a lot of research.
I do.
So I'm just having a hard time having that make sense with what you said about planning and preparing.
Dan was a better planner than I was.
Hang on, let me ask you a question.
I'm so sorry.
You stated yesterday that you're not a planner. Did you say
But
that?
I did say that, but let me put a caveat on that.
Please.
I am not a planner in the initial stages the way Dan was, but you know, I rarely go into anything willy-nilly, and I rarely do anything that I don't complete.
State's Exhibit 82 showed that you were doing some of your research, maybe, on February 1st. You were searching for gun shops at that time.
I'm not sure what State Exhibit 82 is.
Okay, it was your some of your internet history.
Okay.
It was showed to you yesterday by your counsel and asked to you by your counsel about February 1st, and you're searching for gun shops in Portland. What were you searching for?
That was different. I wasn't researching that. When I'm looking for gun shops in Portland, it was not for gun pieces. At this point, it's on a whole different conversation. That's writing, and that's a little cubicle in and of itself in my life. What Dan and I were talking about was, did we need to own a gun at this point? And while we had both been adamant anti-gun people for a long time, the last 3 or 4 years had changed how we felt about that. And we were discussing it and had been discussing it for well over a year.
So as what was described yesterday as a left-leaning individual,
Yes?
your response to gun violence in the country was to buy a gun.
In 2017, one of the memes of the left was, if we continue to be anti-guns, does that mean that everybody in the country who will own a gun but the people on the left? And it was a serious concern. Lots and lots and lots of people were changing their ideas about gun ownership because the country had become so diversified.
Well, Ms. Brophy, I appreciate a meme as well and what other people's opinions might be, but I'm asking your position as somebody who was so anti-gun, in fact, that your law enforcement husband wasn't allowed to have a gun in the house.
No.
Hang on.
Sorry.
So anti-gun, but your response to gun violence increasing in this country was to buy a gun yourself. Yes or no?
Yes, with a caveat.
At what point, from the time you received this ghost gun to June 2nd, did you decide that you were not going to use it?
That we're speaking now of the gun that we bought at the gun show.
No.
Oh, all right. Ask me the question again, please.
This ghost gun that I just showed
Right.
you, what point did you decide you were not going to use it?
I never decided I was not going to use it.
Is that why you kept it?
I kept it because eventually I was going to put it together and write this story.
Okay. And you decided the way to keep it would be to put it in a box with scarves and purses and store it in storage.
No. What I decided was to store it away until I reached the point that I would do it, but I was trying to get moved at that point. Certainly there was, I didn't see another big option there, and I even marked the box because at any point I expected the police to come back to me and say things like, does Dan have a computer? Do you all have a computer? Can we look at any of this? Do you all have anything else? So I marked it so I could find it again. That was for the police benefit. That wasn't for mine.
Oh.
I marked the box that I packed that it had a gun kit in it because I thought sooner or later the police are going to come back to me. And the police never once talked to me after that.
Did you literally just say that was for the police's benefit?
That was literally what I said. I marked the box for the police's benefit so that I could find it again when the police came back.
For what?
Well, I sort of thought that if the police didn't find something, they would want to come back and re-interview, and I would be able to show them things. I thought the fact that all they had was Dan's phone and not a computer premise they may have reached a dead end and said, Mrs. Brophy, is there anything you can give us that would help? Any electronic equipment? Anything else? So I was kind of in my mind making a list. At that point, silly me, since I believed I didn't kill my husband, I didn't think I was a serious suspect.
Despite you telling people that you were.
I told people I was the suspect because it's always the wife.
All right. So you lost me there for a minute. Let's circle back. You said something about computers.
Right.
I didn't ask anything about computers. I'm asking about a gun.
You're asking why I was marking things for the police.
I did not ask you that.
Okay.
I think maybe that's where I got a little lost.
Okay.
You said that you marked that box for the police benefit.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So you thought that was important to the police, that they might want this gun kit.
I had a hard time believing that I would be interviewed by the police for 45 minutes. We would have a brief conversation on the telephone, and I would never hear from them again till the case was solved. I thought for sure the police would come back and say, is there anything else you've got that could help us? And that would have included the gun kit.
Let's
You
make
know?
this easier. What is the relevance of this gun kit to the police?
None, but we had it. You know, I figured they'd ask for it sooner or later.
Why would the police ask you for a gun kit that they don't know that you own? I'm failing to understand what your rationale was for making this available to the police. You think it's so important to them that at some point they're going to come asking for it, but you don't call them.
I figured the police were doing the police job the way the police did it, that they probably did not need, I will be the first to tell you, I got my detective's license on TV. And I can guarantee you I had ideas on how this case should have gone. But I sort of figured the police had more experience and they were the ones in charge.
So you think you have relevant evidence to a murder investigation, and you don't think you should mention it to the police?
How does a gun kit, even though I marked it, how is a gun kit relative evidence?
I'm asking you.
I'm asking you because I don't think it is, because it's never been put together.
Then why would you mark it for the police?
Because I figured the police would come back and want to know.
So what else did you think was relevant to the police investigation that you marked and did not share with them?
I thought they would eventually want to know about the computers. I thought they would eventually want to go through the computers and see what they could find, if anything, that would help them.
And did you give them a computer that belonged to Dan?
No. We had a computer. They never asked for it. But in my mind, I knew they would eventually, if they didn't solve the case by somebody coming in and confessing, they would eventually come back and say, can we see your computer? My computers weren't packed because I thought they were relevant to the police if the police wanted to go in that direction.
Well, that's not exactly true, right? I mean, you had a computer in storage.
No. I had a computer in a box in one room and a computer by the bed in another room. That's not in storage.
Right, one in a box in your room. What about the one that was in the storage unit?
There was not a computer in the
So
storage.
there wasn't a laptop in the storage unit?
There was not.
Okay.
What your guys' testimony was, they found the computer in a bedroom and they found the computer in a box in the other, what had been the office.
Mm-hmm. And you would agree then that the stuff that was found on the computer that has been shown here in court was on the computer that was packed away in a box?
I think that's how they did it, but you know, it were the two computers.
Why did you get a new computer in March of 2018?
When you open the computer, the old computer, you can't read the screen because it's become lines across it.
So you did all your research of all these guns on one computer, then packed that away and put it in a box in the closet, and then you got a new computer, is that right?
I get a new computer every year. I take a computer with me when I go out to the fields. I beat a computer up. I buy a fairly inexpensive computer because I know I'm replacing it the next year.
And you thought the police would want that, but you didn't give it to them?
The police never contacted me again. I assumed that they were doing their job and didn't want my interference.
Nancy also claimed that while she had been packing the house for sale, she specifically packed the ghost kit and marked it in the event that detectives might want it. Because if she was anticipating as detectives wanting to see it, why didn't she just tell them she had it and given it to them in the first place? She'd had it long before she had the gun show handgun. And during the search, investigators noticed one piece missing, which is this sliding barrel. It wasn't with the ghost kit, and it wasn't packed in the house, in the storage unit, or anywhere else. Nancy stated that it was just somewhere in the house. It must be there, but they went through every box, and they could not find it. She stated that the last place she remembered seeing it was on the floor of her bedroom closet. Now, this just isn't just like an item, any sort of like item in a home that you just might have misplaced. This was key evidence that would have exonerated her as a suspect if she had just been able to produce it and say, look, it doesn't match. Job done. That's it. Case closed. I didn't murder my husband. But this was the only item not recovered, and it was one of the only things Nancy couldn't remember. We also see from Nancy's cell phone records that she goes to a gun range 2 days in a row once the eBay slide and barrel arrive. She claimed that she was in the area looking for property to buy, but the area she was in wasn't residential land or even private land. It was government-owned land, and it wasn't for sale. And because it was used as a gun range, there really wasn't anything else around it for miles, which you would like to see at a place where people are just free firing bullets. This particular gun range was basically just a wooded area, and you could just show up and start shooting. There wasn't a check-in or any sort of security in the area. It wasn't that kind of shooting range. And I think we can safely say this was another lie from Nancy. When faced with the evidence of her car being seen on surveillance footage, Nancy could never really explain why or how she got to downtown that morning.
You've seen all the video of you driving around downtown at this point, right?
Yes.
Seen any still photographs from that.
Mm-hmm.
And you testified on direct that it looked like your van.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't quite say. You do agree that that is you at this point, right?
You know, I do. But I would say that it took me a while to get to that stage.
Yeah. But as you sit here today, you agree that it is you driving that van that morning.
Yes, but I also think that only because of the date stamp can I tell you it was that morning.
Right. You're not challenging that. You're agreeing that that is you.
We have more things to challenge than me driving around in this case.
You would agree that you're driving around and in front of the Culinary Institute at the exact time that Dan is being murdered?
No, actually, I don't agree with that. I was driving around for a full hour before Dan got murdered. I was down there before Dan ever got to school. Was driving around riding for a full hour. I was only in that vicinity for 6 minutes, and I don't know that Dan was murdered in that 6 minutes. You know, we agree that he was murdered in that time frame, but in terms of when he arrived and shortly thereafter, but whether it's not in that 6 minutes or not, I don't know.
I'm sorry, did you just say that you were driving around writing?
Yes, that's what I was doing, was driving around writing. I testified to that yesterday, that I would find a place to park and I'd jot down ideas.
I thought you didn't know that you were driving.
Yesterday, what I testified for was that when I was sitting in there, I could remember being in the parking lot writing. Didn't I say that yesterday?
No.
Okay.
So let's go back over this.
Okay, let's go back.
View. So Mrs. Brophy, don't ask questions. Mr. Overstreet, don't answer questions.
Sorry.
So yesterday, you stated that you remembered a time being in that area, and you were riding. There was a white van. There was a man going back and forth between the white van and some other location. You assumed that he was working on the van. It was distracting to you, and that you decided to leave. Do you remember that? Is that accurate?
Yeah.
Okay. Your attorney then asked you if that was on June 2nd.
And I said I did not know.
Right. So if you do not know, you have no memory of driving around downtown on the morning of June 2nd, how can you sit here today and say that I was driving around writing?
Because if I was down there, that's what I was doing. And you're right. I stand corrected that I should have answered the question differently and said, I don't know. But I do know, based upon the timestamps, that I was down there an hour before Dan died. And that I was only down there for 6 minutes or less from the time that he signed into the building
Right.
until you see me again leaving the area.
Right. That 6 minutes, you just happened to be in front of the Culinary Institute during that time.
No, I wasn't.
Did you see the video where you can see your van turning off of 17th onto Jefferson at 7:28 a.m.?
I did see that, but that doesn't mean I was in front of the Culinary Institute. That means I would have come up from another street to have gotten there.
But you're not seen on any other cameras until that moment.
But as you all testified, if there's a train, you can't see when people cross Madison. So I could have been, and what I actually think I was, if this is having thought about it for a while, is in another parking lot off Madison at that point. So I can say at 7:28, I definitely turned the van and was driving there, and we all saw it. But I have no idea, and I know I wasn't parked in front of the building, so what I would have been is riding someplace else and coming around. Now, I'm doing this based upon putting stuff back together, not based upon actual memory.
Right? You said you know that you wouldn't have been parked in front of the building, but how would you know that?
Because I would have gone inside. Because I would have said, "Hi, Dan, how are you?" Because when Dan came out of the building, he would have said, "Hey, Nancy, how are you?" You know, we're not foreigners. We know each other.
How do you know you didn't go in the building?
I know I didn't go in the building because I didn't kill Dan. You know, I know that for a fact.
If you have no memory, how do you know you didn't go in the building?
You know, I'm reconstructing this, but I'm reconstructing this based upon what I know in my heart. And what I know in my heart is the reason why I have no memory is because I was stunned by the fact Dan was dead. And I wouldn't have been stunned if I'd been in the building and shot him.
I didn't suggest that you did go in to shoot him. What I'm suggesting and asking is, did you just go in the building? And how would you know if you didn't?
I agree that, but he wasn't part of my focus that morning. My focus was on my story and getting it out and getting it done, you know. And Dan is at work. You know, your wife doesn't drop in to see you at work just because she's driving by. You know, she assumes you're working. I assume Dan is working.
You did it 2 weeks prior.
I did it for a specific purpose, which was to go to the bathroom.
Right. So, Ms. Brophy, would you agree that it's possible that you went into the OCI on the morning of June 2nd to use the bathroom?
No, I wouldn't.
Impossible.
I would say it was impossible.
Even though you have no memory of it.
Even though I have no memory of it.
Her first initial story that we hear on the tape that she has with the police death notification was that she was home all morning. But during trial, she changed her story a bit to saying that she possibly could have gone to Starbucks to get a coffee because that was her routine. But then she said the day before that it was Dan who went and got her coffee every morning, and it was one of the things that she loved most about him.
He ordered a chai tea latte. You know, we had our drinks.
Did Dan know your order?
Yeah.
Did he often go to Starbucks in the morning to get your
He did.
coffee? Was that really the routine?
That was really the routine.
You would wake up, stay in bed, he'd bring you Starbucks.
Even when we were on vacation, he would go out and find coffee for me. And even if we were in a foreign country, you know, that was our routine. And he would come back and I would get up and get dressed and drink coffee.
Is that every day or most days?
Most days, you know. He was a tea drinker, and so he drank Lapsang Susong. And Lapsang Susong is a strong smoky tea. And I love this about him. He drank that because he read a book by James Michener called Centennial. And in it, they talked about how the Scottish traders drank this smoky tea, and Dan was so interested in it, he went out and got some and tried it and liked it. Now, how can you not love a guy who has chosen a literary reference for his tea? You know, we were a team.
In the morning that Dan died, you expected him to have a cup of his tea.
I did.
Then, when faced with further evidence that her bank statement didn't show that she went to Starbucks that morning, she said that she probably paid in cash, but we see from her bank statements that would have been very unusual. She said it was her habit to utilize the drive-thru, and we see she's very consistent in how she uses her debit card to make her Starbucks purchases. It's like clockwork. And we see from her bank statements that she very consistently uses her debit card to make all of her purchases. She really doesn't seem to be the kind of person that carries cash. She also herself says she doesn't carry a purse. She just keeps her bank cards in her bra. Another example of is she digging around her bra for loose change or cash to pay for her Starbucks? I don't think so. Nancy's demeanor at trial was also very relaxed. She was very emotionless during the numerous testimonies in this trial, and when she took the stand, she was allowed to remove her mask. I watched nearly the entire 6-week trial and was really shocked when it was announced that Nancy would take the stand. In my experience watching trials, it usually never ends well for the defendant. I immediately knew this was not going to be a good idea, and from the second she sat down, this was confirmed. She smiled at people in the courtroom, laughed with her lawyers, and told little jokes and stories like she was at a tea party instead of her own trial. You would never have guessed she was there because she was on trial for murder.
We needed to pay off the credit cards, that's absolutely true, but we needed to get the house in shape.
What was the interest on the credit card?
I don't know.
It's about 15%.
You know, I don't know because Dan paid them and he paid attention, and but I think one of them was higher than the other.
What was the interest on the 401k loan?
It wasn't very high at all. It was a really low interest. I was kind of surprised by that, but I can't tell you exactly what it was.
So let's just hypothetically, if Dan's credit card was 15%.
It was probably 5 on the 401k
Right.
loan.
So would you agree that it would make more sense to pay off a higher interest credit card and then just save that money or use that for something else?
I would agree if, in fact, we hadn't already had a plan in place and working on it.
Okay. We heard a lot about the yard. A lot about the yard. We got a little conflicting information
Okay.
about who actually cleaned it.
Yes. I heard that myself.
What do you have to say about? What do you have to say about that?
James Denny did the heavy duty work. Trust me, he had the tractor. He did the heavy duty work. But Susan and her boyfriend did a lot. They called it something else, but I thought it was a ditch witch. And they pulled up a lot of the blackberries. So it was a combination effort that everybody's laying claim to, and I don't care.
Yeah.
Fine. As long as it got done, I didn't need to, I could have handed out ribbons. You got this, you got that, but that was just sarcastic. Ignore that. What I would really say is everybody worked hard on it. Everybody deserved credit for it.
Sounds like you had a lot of help.
I did.
Now, Nancy seemed to have an excellent memory, but claimed several times to have cognition issues, telling the courts that her mother had dementia and had died of dementia, and she expressed her greatest fear was also experiencing a mental decline. She could remember everything she did the day that Dan died, except what she did that morning. The prosecution did an excellent job during their cross-examination of Nancy.
Preparation for this trial, you haven't seen your bank records?
Well, I saw them months and months ago.
Okay. And you've heard testimony that you go to Starbucks quite a bit.
I do.
I think somebody said almost $1,000 in a year or something like that.
Yeah, I was shocked by that figure too.
I think we all would be. But there's no charge for Starbucks on the morning of June 2nd.
Yes, but if you go through my bank records, you will see there's no charge for Starbucks a lot of days when I know that I had coffee. You know, if I had cash, I could have paid cash. Keep in mind that I don't have my purse with me because I'm not carrying a purse. I'm not wearing a bra, so I don't have a credit card with me. I don't have my phone with me, so I would have had cash and just given it to them.
It makes more sense that you'd have cash over a card?
It makes more sense if I don't have a bra that I don't have a card with me.
And you do agree you left your phone at home that morning?
I agree I wasn't wearing a bra, so my phone wouldn't have been in my bra.
Right. So you're just this day is the day that you paid cash at Starbucks?
I pay cash at Starbucks a fair amount.
Right. So in the morning, if Dan doesn't bring you coffee, it would be normal for you to get up, not fully get dressed, run to Starbucks, use cash, use a card, who cares, right? Go back home and write.
Mm-hmm.
That was normal.
That would be a normal morning.
Okay.
On a day when I wasn't committed to doing something else.
Right. But on June 2nd, now you're saying that morning you got up. Well, let's take a step back.
Okay.
The night before, your
Okay.
testimony was that you went to sleep late or went to bed late. And when you went to bed, you went up to that attic bedroom
Yes.
and Dan was already in bed
Yes.
and he was asleep.
Yes.
And the reason you went to bed late was because of a leak? Is that
No.
the reason you went to bed late, or it just happened to be?
No, I frequently went to bed much later than Dan.
I see.
Dan went to bed early because he got up early.
Okay. What time did he go to bed that night?
I don't know.
Okay. What time did you go to bed?
I don't know that.
Well, you said it was late. What's your reference point?
Well, it was later than Dan. My reference point was that there was water on the floor.
Okay.
And the water on the floor, I was trying to clean it up enough that, we didn't step in it in the middle of the night and didn't make it worse.
And which sink are you talking about?
The sink in the bathroom upstairs. So my bedroom is long and narrow. And right off of my bedroom to the left is a bathroom. And as I stepped in there, we go from carpeting to sheet goods, and I could feel the water under my feet.
Okay. I think it was maybe just a little confusing. There was some testimony about a problem with the kitchen sink, but you're not talking about the kitchen sink.
No, and I thought that was not, I thought it was confusing, but I also thought at that point I was probably making a point rather than pointing to the right sink, just pointing to a sink in general.
Okay, fair enough. I just want to make sure we're talking about the right sink.
Right.
I just wasn't clear on that. So you're talking about the sink with the leak that was of
Right.
concern on June 1st was in the bathroom upstairs. Okay. So you kind of clean it up. You go to bed late. It sounds like maybe you woke up at some point in the night.
I wake up every night in the middle of the night.
Do you have a specific recollection of waking up in the middle of the night
Nope.
that night? Okay. And by that, you mean like you have to use the restroom or something?
Or, I really don't sleep very well at all, and I particularly don't sleep when I'm wound up. And when I'm working on a story, I'm wound up. So I'm just not a great sleeper anymore.
So when you wake up, was Dan already up?
Yes, Dan was standing over the sink in the bathroom.
And what was he doing?
He said, why do we have all these towels in the sink? And so that was what we talked about, was the fact that I think there's a leak, and I had felt underneath, but I couldn't feel it, on the, whatever that long pipe's called, that, he said, well, I'll get something, he said, I'll get something, or maybe I know he got something because I saw it. I'm not sure which way this is the truth here. But when I dealt with it later, there was a white bucket underneath. But the last thing I saw him doing was taking the wet towels down the stairs.
That's the last time you saw him?
During her cross-examination, and this is in the trial where I felt that things were over for Nancy, when she started to get flustered. She looked to her lawyers every time she was telling a lie, and at one point she even asked them to confirm if the statement she had just said was her truth, essentially. She had an excellent recall when it came to insignificant questions, but when she gets flustered and starts saying, "I don't know, I'm not sure, I might have said," are only the conversations that she had already had, that she had already made statements about. She'd been already caught in several variations of her stories during the trial, which to me as an observer came off as her not being able to remember what she'd lied about.
Nancy didn't want this lifestyle. She wanted to be an expat. She wanted to move to Portugal. Not Dan. In fact, Nancy wanted something so differently, something that Dan couldn't give her. She had him take on another job. Not to help out a friend. For money. Nancy knew there's financial struggle. She saw an opportunity for Dan to work more and bring in more money to maybe alleviate the finances. And so Dan goes to work at Avamere, and he's working both jobs. And what did you hear? What did that do to him? It was running him into the ground. He was exhausted. Nancy even commented several times to people that Dan was changing. Yeah, he's tired. Working all the time. So yeah, does he come home and lay on the couch a little bit more? Watch a little bit more TV? Probably. Is that what Nancy wants? No. She wants Dan to do stuff for her. Maybe Dan wasn't cooking as much for her as she liked. Maybe Dan wasn't giving her enough attention. This wasn't working for Nancy. Dan was a problem. This isn't just about money, it's about the lifestyle. And Dan couldn't give it to her. I'm almost to a stopping point, I promise, Your Honor. No one said that Nancy didn't love Dan. We didn't bring any witnesses in here to say, we don't think she loved him. It must have been a problem. Nobody said that. I'm not asserting that. She probably did love him. But she wasn't getting the lifestyle that she needed. She had to make a change. Defense made a big deal about compromises. Well, if Nancy wants to move to Portugal, Dan doesn't, maybe they'll just take some trips, more trips. That was the compromise. I think once we finally got to an understanding of what compromise meant, if you remember, we think that that's probably the final compromise. And that's what was going to save this whole situation. So we got this money now, we got this plan, and we're going to compromise. But those trips aren't Portugal. Those aren't lavish trips out of the country. The farthest they went out of the country was to Vancouver. Then they went to Malibu or Monterey Bay, went to an aquarium, took a cooking class. And then their next big trip was to Mount Rushmore. That's not good enough for Nancy. Nancy needs Portugal. Nancy wants more. These little trips aren't going to do it. As I said, this murder is not entirely motivated by money. It's that lifestyle change that that Nancy needed to have. And as you heard from Dr. Warford, as I've mentioned several times, Nancy is a problem solver, and Dan has become a problem in her life. She needs to change it, and there's no other way. And divorce is not an option. Nancy even said that on the stand when we talked about divorce. Divorce is expensive. What is Nancy going to get after a divorce? They split half their earnings, or I'm sorry, half their stuff. The house sold for $565,000. It ultimately sold for that. After you pay realtor fees and after you pay off the mortgage, there's maybe a couple $100,000 left. They're going to split that. So she gets $100,000. That's her plan. She's not going to get the lifestyle she wants. That's all she gets is $100,000 out of this. Divorce was not an option for Nancy. The only way that she could live the lifestyle that she wanted was to murder Dan and be entitled to upwards of $1.6 million.
I doubt Nancy will ever admit what she did, but it is clear in this case with the mountain of evidence, though circumstantial, is undeniable. Her legal team was never successful in identifying another suspect. In this case, nothing else made sense. We see in the trial there are a few instances where Nancy's mask comes off. This is one instance that, for me, showed Nancy's sweet, loving persona was only that, a fake persona.
So I'm assuming that's Sarah Gitchell.
Who's the voice that you hear?
Yes, that's my voice.
That's your voice.
Yes,
And this is a phone call that you made to Sarah Gitchell?
could be, yes. That's what it says.
Okay. Why don't we go ahead and go back to the beginning? Play that.
So far, they haven't covered anything that we didn't know. I mean, they had all these little girls who cried today, you know, and I've seen all these little girls. Well, I've seen particularly the Spanish girl cry 3 times now. So, you know, she cries off cue.
Didn't I just say essentially that?
That's your response after hearing these people testify to their experience. That's what you thought about that?
I thought it was interesting that Corinda Perez, when she told me, did not cry. When she's on the stand, she cries and she sobs and she carries on. I think she had a terrible, terrible experience. That I totally agree with. And I am sympathetic to that. But I also think she can cry on cue when she gets on stand. Because she didn't cry when she told me. She told me and I cried. You know, when we went to an event that she came up and said, I am the person who did CPR. And I immediately burst into tears, you know, and she told me the story. And I told her how wonderful I thought she was, you know, that she had done that. But
You seem to be a couple steps ahead of me throughout this.
Sorry.
You're expecting this?
I don't know if expecting that is what I would say. But I'm sorry, I'll try and be quieter.
When you keep saying Clonda Perez over and over and you keep mentioning her name, in this audio, you don't actually say Clonda Perez.
Okay?
That is how she spoke of a woman who tried to save Dan's life. She almost seemed jealous that she was getting so much support from the community. We see it slip again when the prosecutor starts to read back her own statements from her article, How to Murder Your Husband.
My last question to you, Ms. Brophy, is if there's one thing that you know about murder, is it that anyone is capable of doing it?
I absolutely believe that. And I believe that because, once again, if it's your child or the person in front of you, 10 to 1, you will find yourself capable of murder. I think most people don't murder for flimsy reasons. I think people get pushed into a corner where they have no other options. I think people murder because they're protecting somebody they love. I think people murder, well, there's some mercy killings perhaps where people murder to save the person they love pain, but I think that's rare. I think people murder in rage. I don't think people murder because they say, well, you know, we'll just sneak down and do this quickly, you know. I think if you're going to murder somebody, 10 to 1, that person knows that you are not happy with them. You know, I don't think that should come as a mystery, you know, to anybody. I don't think people murder willy-nilly out of the, just because, you know. Yeah, financial reason is a big reason. But going back to my case, there's not enough financial reason there to make it. I do better with Dan alive financially than I do with Dan dead. There's no financial gain here. You know, we had solved our problem. I turned the book into an editor and I said, well, they had a problem here in October of 2017, but they had solved it. But then she murdered him in 2018 when they had solved their financial problem. Where is the motivation, I would ask you? You know, an editor would laugh and say, I think you need to work harder on this story. You have kind of a big hole in it. You know, I think people murder out of anger more than anything else.
All in all, I think this was a very good trial. We saw excellent lawyering from the prosecution. The judge was very patient and kind to everyone in the courtroom. Nancy's lawyers did their best to represent their client the best they could, and I think it was a very fair trial for her. But after so many weeks of trial, I was so glad when both sides rested their case. On May 25th, 2022, after nearly 4 years of waiting for justice, the jury came back with their final verdict.
All right, if we can have Mrs. Brophy rise. It says, we, the jury, duly impaneled and sworn in the above entitled cause, do find our verdicts upon the counts submitted to us as follows. Count 1, murder in the second degree, guilty. And then with regards to the 2 questions, the state alleging that during the commission of this felony, the defendant caused or threatened the use of a firearm, the answer is yes. And then the state further alleges that during the commission of this felony, the defendant and the victim were married, the answer is yes. Now, I will ask juror number 46, it indicates your number in the signature block, and that is you who put your number there? All right, and then by a show of hands, I'm going to ask everyone first whether the verdict of guilty is their verdict on count 1. Raise your hand if it is. All right, and then with regard to the question of caused or threatened the use of a firearm, if your answer is yes, raise your hand. And then lastly, if during the commission of the felony, the defendant and victim were married and your answer is yes, raise your hand. All right. Does either side have anything for the record?
No, Your Honor.
No, Your Honor.
All right. The jury will be excused. We thank you for your time. Well, I do want to say to the family and friends of Chef Brophy, as he came to be described during this trial, I can't imagine what it's like to go through years of waiting to find resolution in this case. Although I never knew him, I did learn a lot about him through the various witnesses that testify. And I know that Karen Brophy said it was heartwarming to hear from them, because I think the thing that you can take away, which I hope gives you some small measure of solace, is that he was a mentor and a teacher to many and had an impact over a lot of people's lives. And hopefully they will turn and have an impact on others themselves as they teach. The impression I came away with was that he was a man of quiet dignity. And so I hope that this at least will bring some level of closure to you. Mrs. Brophy, if you can rise for sentencing. In Oregon, for the crime of murder in the second degree, the sentence is a life sentence. I'll order that you be considered for parole after 25 years. And we'll leave open restitution for 90 days. I will let you figure out, I know you want to pick a date right now, so we'll figure that out. I will waive other fines and fees given the lengthy prison time. You can have a seat.
Daniel Brophy's mother, Karen Brophy, she provided a written statement to have me read to the court.
Okay.
It's been a long 3.5 years for Jack and me. They've been a time of reflecting on the loss our family has suffered. What we heard on that September day, we could not believe. Nancy arrested? You were part of our family for over 25 years. Was that relationship all deception? My heart breaks if this is true. We will never understand how you could decide that it was an advantage for you to take the life of our son, that he did not deserve to live. So you took his life from all of us, a pawn in your plan? You will never know our beautiful great-grandchildren, Dan's grandchildren. These children deserve to know and love him as we all have. It has been heartwarming for us to hear from many what an amazing, wonderful man our son was. We always knew that, now the world does. I don't know what the rest of your life will be like. Not pleasant, I am sure, but we hope you will find God's grace ahead of you. Karen and Jack.
The years of deceit have spanned decades. From learning that your solution to my father being married to my mother was, I can fix that, to years of payroll and tax fraud that you waged on your employees. You've always thought you were one step ahead. Your largest financial contribution in the latter years was sending my father off to work an extra job so you could continue to pretend to be an author. My father possessed more knowledge, depth, accomplishments, recognition, and joy in life than a person as shallow and self-serving as yourself are capable of. Instead of rising to the occasion, facing life's challenges head-on, and contributing in a meaningful way, you opted to lie, steal, cheat, defraud, and ultimately kill the man that was, for some reason still unbeknownst to me, your biggest fan. You executed my father in an act of cold-blooded, premeditated murder, the man that did everything for you. Cooked your meals, washed your clothes, accepted your sedentary nature, supported your failed endeavors, and brought you into the warm embrace of our family. Your repayment for decades of dedication, trust, and love? To plot his murder on Christmas Eve, while in the presence of his parents and grandchildren. Pain you have delivered to us is immeasurable. Your theft of a parent and grandfather for such selfish reasons is unforgivable. You were, to borrow from your catalog, the wrong wife. Lying at the bottom of a river or buried in the earth somewhere was the instrument you used to destroy lives. Not only the life of the man that loved you unconditionally, but those of my grandparents that offered you acceptance and support, of my wife that took solace in knowing there was family on this side of the country to help support our growing family, of my eldest daughter who was beguiled by your feigned displays of nurturing, of the son my wife was 5 months pregnant with on the day he was murdered, who would have surely been my father's greatest admirer, and our youngest child who will never even know your name. You are a monster, and I am ashamed that I have to admit to my children that people like you walk amongst us, undetected, until the moment best serves to let narcissistic personality traits devolve into those of a full-blown sociopath. Unburdened by morality, empathy, compassion, and decency, you chose to extinguish the life of someone capable of giving all of those things to the many people that surrounded him. You lived in the shadow of a great human being. Instead of acknowledging your shortcomings and redirecting your delusions of grandeur, you chose to deprive this world of a teacher, a father, a grandparent, and someone who served as an inspiration to the countless lives he touched. I would suggest you be ashamed of your actions, but that would presuppose you possess the ability to think of anyone besides yourself. In the words of Gabriel Garcia Marquez, there's no greater misfortune than dying alone. Yet for you, Nancy, I can't imagine a more fitting end to this tragedy. Thank you, Your Honor.
And remember when Nancy said orange wasn't her color? Well, I guess, as luck would have it, the uniforms at the Multnomah County Detention Center are blue. Nancy will be eligible for parole when she is 96 years old. Enjoy prison, Nancy. Well, that is it for this video as well as this series. As always, thank you so much for watching. If you like the content and what I do over here, please don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss my next upload. If you enjoyed the content, please give the video a like. That would be much appreciated as it helps the channel to grow. We also have channel membership as well as Patreon if you want to support the channel. In the description box, you will find links to all my socials to connect with me as well as other goodies. But that is it for me. Thank you so much for being here. I will see you on the next one. Bye for now.